during the turmoil of the Khmer Rouge era in the 1970s.
This is okay.
कमरे में ले जाओ
हम्म
पीपी को कमरे में ले जाओ अपने
देख लो reflection. As I sit in silence, I allow my mind to gently focus within and touch base with the being that moves this physical body. I am a peaceful soul, and in this state of serenity, I direct my thoughts to the source of this divinity. I feel myself surrounded by a vast, radiant light. This light is not just any light. It is the very essence of divinity, the source of love, strength, and guidance. As I bask in this divine light, feel its warmth enveloping me, as if it were a protective cloak from the universe itself. This light is God, my superhero, a beacon of endless power and grace. With each breath, I envision this divine light infusing every part of my being, filling my heart with unwavering courage and boundless love. God, in all His glory, is not just a distant figure, but an active force within me, igniting the superhero qualities that lie dormant. As I breathe in, I draw in the strength of this divine presence, empowering me with resilience, enabling me to face any challenge with the confidence of a hero. Every cell in this body is rejuvenated by this divine energy, amplifying my innate abilities and giving me the power to overcome obstacles with grace and determination. I release any doubts or fears that might hold me back. I let go of anything that contradicts the superhero I am becoming. I embrace the divine power that fills me, allowing it to guide my actions and decisions. I visualize myself in moments of need, whether facing a personal challenge, offering support to others, or pursuing my dreams. I see how this divine energy fuels my actions, amplifies my compassion, and sharpens my clarity. I know that God, my superhero, is always with me, acting as a silent yet powerful ally in my journey. And with each breath, I reinforce this connection to infinite source of power which awakens the hero within me, transforming everyday moments into opportunities to shine with extraordinary light. And as I bring this meditation to a close, I take a moment to appreciate the superhero qualities that are now awakened. I carry this divine connection with me, knowing that God's light and strength are ready to empower me in every aspect of my life. I slowly return my awareness to the present moment. Om Shanti.
Hello.
Good afternoon once again to everyone out there viewing us this afternoon for a very, very interesting discussion, and perhaps not just discussion, but sharing of experiences on a topic which concerns not just one or two of us, but I think most of us have got some experience of the word called trauma. And before we do that, I would first like to welcome everyone right now in Zoom. And I was informed that we have translators right now who would be giving us the translations for Spanish, German, and French. So to our viewers in this language, welcome everyone. Welcome and good morning to those who are in Central Europe, and good afternoon for us here who are in Asia. For those who are out there in the US, it's going to be a good evening or an early morning for those who are there at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, 12 hours behind our time right now. So once again, this is going to be an international participation of guests, and our viewers are also coming from all over. And as one of my friends would say, good afternoon from inner space, good evening, and good morning, even those who are out of space, in outer space. So, as I said earlier, it's going to be a very special afternoon, evening, and morning to all of us, as a very interesting and special subject is in front of us right now. And how did we come into this particular topic? It came about sometime in May and June when we were discussing on relationships on mother and father as we were celebrating respectively Mother's Day and Father's Day. And there were some certain questions about not so very, I would say, things which are not so good happening in families. That's why how could there be a happy Mother's Day or a happy Father's Day when there are things that have brought some type of serious injury in terms of relationships. So to give us more, perhaps an in-depth view of what these untoward incidents could be, it has made imprints, injuries in children and even as adults, we will call on our speaker who I think most of us already know her. She is not just a broadcaster of several broadcasting units like BBC before, and she was also with the Canadian Broadcasting Company. But more than that, I think you would be interested to know behind all her being a writer, author, and broadcaster, she is a Raj Yoga teacher for more than 50 years now. So she was introduced to spirituality so early as she was really trying to discover herself and finding what it is that she really wants in her life. And because of this, she has that aim to uplift people where they are at and to go beyond and bring them to empower themselves. As much as right now, she is really a person, a soul of embodiment, an embodiment of power. And for that, we recognize that she wants us to recognize that great power within us too. So this afternoon, once again, dear friends, fellow travelers all over the world, let us all welcome our good friend, not just as an ordinary friend, but a special spiritual friend. Let's all welcome Denise Lawrence, all the way from South France right now. Sister Denise, please come in.
Thank you so much, Sister Ellen. So it's delightful to be with you, and thank you for that kind introduction. Yeah, today we are taking up trauma, and trauma is a very, I could say, ubiquitous situation. I think there is a big spectrum between slight trauma to extreme trauma. But for everyone who's experienced trauma, whatever level it is, the person who experiences it as quite extreme, because the experience is subjective, it's personal. So I would like to give a bit of an overview of what may be considered trauma, because there are many, many different types of environments in which there is trauma. First of all, if you have a trauma hospital, that's for accidents and injuries, sports injuries, car accidents, falls, where you get serious physical injuries. This is called trauma. And it affects people physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. But I think nowadays, when people are talking about trauma, they are talking about the kind of trauma that affects a child in the environment of the family, or in the religious environment, or the educational environment. And of course, the family, the religious institution, the educational institution are by definition designed to be beneficial for every child. But the reality is that it isn't. And there are many factors which cause this strange dichotomy. Something that is designed to be beneficial has a flaw in the design, which causes it to be harmful. And so I want to also look at these flaws in the design. So who designs the religion? Who designs the family system? Who designs the educational system? Well, we'd have to say it is the people who are the elders, the rulers, the people who are in charge. And in our civilization, I think it's pretty much across the globe, except for a few areas where it isn't, but mostly we are in a system, in a civilization, which is called patriarchal. And a patriarchal system has certain flaws in it that encourage trauma. And one of the ways that the trauma is quite visible in the patriarchal system is in the system of colonialism. So colonialism goes back a long, long time. And I think there was a great deal of colonizing in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. And there it was determined that one set of people is better than another set of people. One set of people is superior to another set of people. And this is reflected in the religious environment, in the educational environment, and in the family setting. And whenever you have a system where somebody is by definition superior, they have a tendency to consider themselves to be outside the law. And so therefore they can do whatever they feel like, because by definition, they are the people who know what's right and wrong. These are the moral authorities. And when you have people in that situation who think of themselves in this way, they think of the people in their charge as objects. And so a child is an it, a woman is an it, and the patriarchal position, people are beings. And so this is actually quite obviously incorrect, but yet a great deal of the social systems in the world today operate on the basis that it is like that. And so this is why trauma is endemic in the system. And it begins in childhood and it continues until death. And I practice spirituality. The system I follow is called Raj Yoga. And there is a philosophy as well as a practice. And it is, I think, very interesting to me to see the comparison between the system, the ideas, the ideology of Raj Yoga and the ideology of the patriarchal system. And one interesting aspect is that Raj Yoga considers that every human being is a being and not any single one of them is an object. And so this idea of some people being considered as objects in comparison to others who are considered as moral authorities actually does not stand up to scrutiny. And I think it's very helpful to think about this because it gives us an opportunity to deconstruct a system but whereby trauma is endemic to the system as a very important instrument for freeing us, the human race, from systems that produce trauma as a matter of course. And I want to also add to these three systems, the family system, the educational system, and the religious system, add to that the medical system, and add to that also the system of employment, the corporate system, businesses, institutions, can be government institutions or other institutions, where people are ranked according to various criteria, such that the people in a high position are assumed to be correct, moral authorities, and people in lower position are treated however the people want to treat them. And of course, there has been a certain amount of pushback in this, which has created laws which protect people in vulnerable positions or in lower positions in the hierarchy. But because the patriarchal system is more important in terms of the social attitudes, this very often overrides the system of protection that is there in the legal system. And the legal system is also a little bit biased because the legal system is based on the patriarchal system. And so therefore the patriarchal system generally wins out when there's any argument between the two systems. And most people do not look at life and the setup of our civilization in this way. But I do because I've been looking at how people handle trauma depending on what system they live by. And I've noticed that if you operate according to the patriarchal system, it's very difficult for a person to become free from the effects of trauma. Whereas when you operate on the system that I work with, which is the system of Raj Yoga, it's much easier because you have a lot of tools at your disposal which can neutralize the very powerful impact of the patriarchal system, which predisposes people in vulnerable positions or lesser positions to accept to be traumatized. And there is this aspect of accepting to be traumatized and refusing to be traumatized. This is a reality which is quite interesting to consider. So let's look at some of the impacts, because we're talking today about the impact of trauma. And most of the people who are dealing with trauma in a psychological approach are dealing with trauma from childhood. There are people who experience trauma in adulthood, but when it's analyzed, you find that their childhood circumstance predisposed them to find themselves in a circumstance of relational trauma, wherever that relationship is in the family or in the workplace or in the religious environment or in the educational environment or the medical environment. And so this impact of the patriarchal system on children is far, far greater than anyone who hasn't considered it would ever imagine or realize. There are people who experience trauma at birth, and this is because of the medical system. And when you experience trauma at birth, the medical system considers the infant, the embryo, as an object. When you get into politics, then immediately it becomes a being, but in terms of medical, it's most often an object. And so they treat pregnancy and delivery as an illness, and you go to hospital for that. And so there are instruments used which are very devastating for the child who is extremely sensitive. Then there is separation from the mother, which is traumatic right there. And a correct birth, of course, when all the circumstances are good, immediately the child is connected with the mother and stays with the mother. But when there is, when the child is taken off to an incubator or taken by another person who's not the mother, then that is already traumatic, because the child needs to be together with the mother from whom the child has just been separated, who has been effectively within the mother's body. And so the medical system does not recognize anything to do with the being of the person. In Raj Yoga, we talk about the soul a great deal, and the soul is the one who experiences everything. And the soul is not an infant's body. The soul is a being who has incarnated into a womb and an embryo, and then the process of emerging from the birth canal and everything can be very gentle, very beautiful, but it can also be very traumatic, depending on the circumstances, depending on the medical people, depending on the drugs that are administered, the forceps used, and all of this, and the separation. So this leaves an impact on that individual for the rest of their lives. And nobody realizes this, and therefore nobody much deals with the fact that there are consequences which the individual has to deal with for the rest of their life. There are some parenting systems which are very authoritarian, which are using violence, verbal violence, physical violence, and this is very traumatic for the young child, who is assumed to be something very different from what the child is. And this is because of the social attitudes which dictate that this is how you should look at a child. The child is bad, you have to correct it. Especially a female child, you have to, limit and cause that individual to be put in boundaries and barriers which are extremely bad for that child, and which have different impacts. Like, for example, it makes it very difficult for that child to study. Makes it very difficult for that child to trust adults. That child is put into a psychologically isolated state, and they remain like that for the rest of their lives, and they are always having to deal with it. And there may be a lot of other consequences that happen. This then is passed from generation to generation to generation. And the system is created and supported by the environment of the patriarchal system. And this is also reflected in the educational system, where students are taught through they're taught to be obedient. They are experiencing different kinds of punishments. It is damaging for creativity, and so on and so forth. And there are some people who have worked on this and who have created alternative ways of education which allow the child to grow. But this is a minority. This is not the overall system. And when the classes are very large, then the system of punitive education is much more. And I think this has a great deal to do with why people are experiencing, or young children and teenagers experience things like ADHD. And there's a great deal of rebelliousness and violence among children. These are reactions to the systems that have been put in place by the, you can say, the moral authorities of any particular country or culture, because this is pretty much across the board, except in very few parts of the world. Now, another thing that you have is a bias. You have bias against people of color, bias against women, bias against children, bias against people with mental health issues, bias against people who may be left-handed, or who may be different in any way. And wherever there's a bias, it gives people the right, or they claim the right to be relatively abusive. And all of this is continuous, and it creates trauma. Now, one of the things that happens, the impact of all of this, is in behavior. And so this goes from early childhood all the way through to adulthood. It applies in the family system, the work system, and so on. There will be addictive behaviors. And there will be lack of empathy. There will be, people will assume that they have rights that they do not have, and they deny rights to others in their workplace or family or in the religious environment, which is something that's claimed, but which they don't have those kind of rights at all. But the patriarchal system does nothing about it, so allows it, condones it, and is part of the problem. So there we have a situation which is cultural, and not just from one culture to another, but it's pretty much across the world. And so one of the other things that I came across very recently is that where there is trauma, depending on how bad it is, of course, there's a whole spectrum of it, but where there is trauma, the two sides of the brain get separated from each other, and that the brain function stops working well. And mostly the educational system, the social system, the policing, all the institutions, they do not recognize this, they deny this. And so the rights of traumatized people are severely violated, which is a re-trauma. One of the things that you find in young girls who are sexually assaulted or molested, and it can be from extremely young childhood, either from family members or from people in the immediate neighborhood, uncles, other relatives or neighbors, or it can also be in the religious environment or the educational environment, where the patriarchal system is complicit and condones this and announces that if a girl makes any claims about having been violated, she by definition lies. And so therefore her claims should not be considered. And so then she gets the message that the world in which she lives, people are allowed to do whatever they want, and she has no recourse, and nobody will listen to what she has to say. And so she becomes isolated, demonized, and classified as a bad person, which is punish the victim. This is the system that is used. And later on, maybe in her teenage or her 20s, if there is a question of rape or assault and she goes to the police, very often she will be told, well, where are the witnesses? And of course, those things don't have witnesses. And so again, she is considered as a liar, and she is punished if she gets pregnant, and the perpetrators get off scot-free. And so this is again because of the patriarchal system, which is complicit in this, which condones this and allows it. And this goes from generation to generation, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And so now you get in some places, you get a lot of very extreme assaults which come into the international media from India, where the patriarchal system is far more extreme than in other parts of the world. And women are extremely badly treated unless the people around them happen to be very good quality beings who do not use the patriarchal system to permit them to do all sorts of abusive behaviors. And so all of these things are trauma, and they leave a very severe impact for the rest of a person's life. It means that they are not able to manage their family very well psychologically. They are not able to be open. They cannot trust. They have all sorts of psychological difficulties. They may have insomnia. They may have various other illnesses that happen. Cancers are very much connected with psychosomatic issues in a lot of cases. So we are in a world which actually encourages trauma on a large scale. And because of the way it's handled, most people, they just keep quiet. And I'm not saying this happens only to girls, this happens to boys and anyone who is sexually different. They are very badly treated, badly traumatized. And this is again because of the patriarchal system, which goes back to the religious laws, which are created by patriarchs, nothing to do with God. So we have to take a serious look at trauma. And so far as my research goes, it is somewhat pushed under the carpet. And yet, more and more people are beginning to speak up. In the self-help groups connected with addiction recovery, you will see that most of the people who end up in addictions, whether it is alcohol or the controlled drugs, crystal meth, cocaine, heroin, all of these things go back to a severely traumatized childhood, where love is destroyed. Love is forbidden. Love is contaminated. Love is poisoned. And of course, love is a very, very healing energy. And how many people really understand love, really know how to give and take love? It's really very few. So let's look at for a moment how the way of spirituality, the way of what I call Raj Yoga, which is there in all of the religious traditions. If you exclude the patriarchal side of it, which is the exoteric aspect of religion, and you go to the esoteric, which is the inner life of a person, there the person can actually develop their connection with the divine, their connection with humanity. But it is relatively rare that you find this, and becoming more rare. I think in previous times, it was really quite natural. But the patriarchal system gradually became stronger, and the natural spirituality became weaker because the traumas destroy your natural spirituality. And so what we are also looking at in this discussion about the impact of trauma is repairing the traumatized soul. And I'm talking about the soul getting traumatized. And people don't really know that all of these experiences that people have from childhood onwards go directly to the soul. The impact is on the soul. The impact is on the nervous system, on the brain, on on every part of the body, but ultimately the indelible impact is on the soul. And so we need to know about souls. We need to know about how to repair souls. And I think this is a bit of a new concept because people don't really think that the soul can get damaged. And so they don't really consider, and they don't really consider that there's any meaning in repairing the soul, or who can repair the soul? Can you repair the soul? Well, I think yes. And this is why there is something called yoga. And when I say yoga, I'm not talking about breathing exercises or physical postures or anything like that. I'm talking about a soul to supreme soul connection between an individual being and the divine source. Because the divine source is known as love, but more than that, love, purity, power, peace, bliss, and many, many more things. This is the one known as the intelligence of the wise. So there are not too many wise people left in the world, but this source has wisdom and love and purity. And when an individual learns to make a direct contact with that source in their mind, then they're able to take energy, which is not like electricity or something like that. It's a special kind of energy that enables all the distortions in the soul to get righted, to come back to their original condition. And so this is a very, very powerful instrument to repair an individual from trauma. Once you are traumatized, your soul gets distorted, and instead of a very beautiful aura, a beautiful resonance and radiance that is very similar to the Supreme Being, that soul is turned into something that looks like a very jagged, broken, maybe looks like a broken glass in pieces with jagged edges. And so the soul is dealing with its jagged edges all the time and is fragmented, cannot be whole. So this energy of the Supreme Being enables the soul to come back together again, to return to how it was before this breaking up of the soul, this fragmenting of the soul ever happened. And of course, it takes time to do this. And there are quite a lot of people who, in their own natural religious practice, do have a personal connection with the divine. But there are far, far more who really don't. And so they are unable to deal with their fragmented state. And this is why there are behavioral problems, addiction problems, a lot of self-medication, a lot of craziness because of being isolated, rejected, not understood, not appreciated, etc., etc. So it's quite a difficult thing to deal with. But we have to start somewhere. And in my experience, every little bit of connection and contact with your own self as a soul and with the Supreme Being as a supreme source, a divine source of these energies that you need to repair, every little bit brings you back into a whole, integrated, healed, and healthy state. And so every little bit helps. Every little meditation does a little bit to bring you back and to restore you to health, to sanity, to be able to trust, to be able to love the self, to have compassion for the self, to understand why the society around you doesn't understand anything other than the impact of the patriarchal system. And so it is, in a way, I think it's a kind of revolution that is beginning to happen because there are so many people who have understood or cottoned on to the idea that, this stuff is real, and the conventional morality as not all it's pretends to be. The amount of corruption and criminal behavior that has been detected within these paragons of virtue has brought it into question. And so now I think what we need is for more and more of this information to become easily available, to be more part of the messaging or the narrative that goes on. You see, when I'm talking about the patriarchal system, I'm talking about a narrative where people are born into a society which has certain beliefs, which they say, whether or not they're true, they don't really check. They just say, yeah, this is what it is. Everybody knows, blah, blah, blah. No, not true. And so the false elements in the narrative have to be challenged, and the true elements have to be introduced so that gradually there is a shift in the narrative. And it is coming. Of course, it needs to come more. It takes a great deal to shift the ways of a civilization, especially a global civilization, but it is nevertheless required. And so I think trauma is being taken up by the community of therapists a great deal, and it's widening. It's coming into the religious system, it's coming into the educational system, coming into the business system. But at the same time, there is also an intensification of the traumatic behavior of the patriarchal system. So you have, in a way, a clash also, a clash between the old system that wants to remain that way and a new system that wants to come in. So I will stop there and let's go back to Ellen and see how we go further. Thank you very much, and Om Shanti.
Thank you very much, Sister Denise. It was a comprehensive discussion on trauma. And I like how you did the historical perspective, because we're not just talking of trauma as it happens now, but how it is related to a historical background like colonialism, which has really made an imprint made things fragmented, and as a whole, the soul just whole has been broken up into pieces. So before we go to our question and answer portion, I would like us to take a little break and see what we have for golden drops at this point. Thank you, Golden Drops, for reminding us once again what vibrations can do. And as they were saying, or what was depicted there is very powerful vibration in joy, love, and peace. And we are creating a better world right now as we understand more on the trauma and how we have been experiencing trauma in our individual lives. So I would like to ask right now our friend and co-traveler here, Miss Tansy, to conduct the question and answer. Miss Tansy, please.
Thank you, Sister Ellen. Good afternoon, sister. Or good morning, is it?
Oh, yes, morning.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Thank you very much for the beautiful sharing you gave us this today, sister. And as you said, we have been operating on in a patriarchal system. So, and that is affecting the way we live our lives, and actually the trauma that we experience stems from that. We do know that in our history, as in Philippine history, there was a time when we were matriarchal. But the advent of the global, the global adventurism that we have become victims of, change that mindset of the matriarchal system that we were in. So we are now really experiencing the effects of the patriarchal dominion that we have been put in. Sister, right now, I think I'll have the first question, Miss Ellen, because I deal a lot with children, and I am now handling 2 little boys who are very obviously traumatized. One easily forgets, although both of them are intelligent, we can see, but one easily forgets what he has just learned, and the other one refuses to write. And both of them are being forced to go with a tribe, because in class, everyone has to remember and everyone has to write. I wonder, because from my point of view, because I have been asked to help, from my point of view, I would like to let the boys be for a while. I said, let us allow the child to forget. Let us not push him into, memorizing and remembering everything. And the other one has to produce what he is asked to write. I said, why don't we wait? Because there might come a time when they will be ripe enough for these activities. Please help us there, sister.
Well, you know, my personal feelings are that the educational system is toxic by definition.
Thank you for the term, sister. I've held it in my heart for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a young child, I have to say that I thought that school was very dangerous and that they were liable to destroy my mind, because what they were teaching was so completely less than basic and nothing to do with life and nothing to do with anything. And whoever invented this educational system was not very bright. And so I did whatever I could to avoid school. And I would show up for the exams and pass everything. But I schooled myself. I read whatever books I decided to read, and I maintained my freedom, my intellectual freedom, and I'm very glad that I did that. And for some reason, the educational people and the family people didn't bother, maybe because of being a girl, because they always think that, well, girl is only useful to reproduce and look after the house, so we won't bother with her. But that was great, because then I could develop myself how I thought fit. But not everybody is as sort of forthright as me, I'm sure. But one thing that you do have in many places is homeschool. And for these 2 little boys, this type of educational environment is not good, because it's authoritarian. It assumes that they are objects, and it's wanting to make them into little robots so that they can go into the workforce and just have no meaning in life at all. So if sometimes there are special schools, but sometimes homeschool may be good, so that you can actually talk with them and listen to them and discover what interests them. Everybody has different learning styles, and there are hardly any who learn anything by learning the 2 times table and whatever it is you have to repeat that doesn't have any meaning. So, you know, I would experiment with that if you have that possibility. Take people into nature. They need to understand about life. They need to understand how to deal with a toxic environment and how to deal with authority figures who don't understand them, how to deal with being an individual who nobody can see, nobody can appreciate. They might not have experienced the kind of attention and guidance and care that they needed in order to develop psychologically. And so the school is like prison for them, and is like that for most people.
I told the parents of these two children, they don't know each other. The boys are far apart from each other, sister. I said, actually, we are all victims of this mob psychology we are in, which rules the world. I said, why does everyone have to have a bachelor's degree when probably many of us have developed ourselves even beyond what is required by the educational system, as you have developed yourself, sister? And somehow, it's just that it is popular to go to school. But in Cebu, I have met a family the parents of these 4 children have been so discouraged by how their children were being taught and treated in their expensive schools that they decided to just let the children be in their house, expose them to books, take them to commune with nature, enjoy the family they are in. And sister, the children who are now adults have adjusted very well to society, teaching themselves. 2 of the boys are now accountants. And the girl, the only one in the family, she is an official in our Department of Foreign Affairs. But look at their curriculum vitae. Highest educational attainment, the girl is grade 4. The 2 boys are both grade 1 and 2, and the 2 little ones still grade 1, but they're doing very well. They speak very well. They deal with people very well, and everybody thinks they are bachelors or masters in their fields, but no. I said, I always tell people who ask, I say, oh, they are human beings who have realized themselves and are still striving to do that.
Well,
I hope I'm right.
Well, this really shows that, you know, the matriarchal system, the social system of ancient times is much more healthy than this thing which was imposed by a foreign culture. Because one of the things that I have also looked at in terms of trauma is colonialism, because colonialism is always extremely damaging to the people that are colonized, and they will impose a lot of restrictions and violence and destroy the natural culture. And this is traumatic for the whole culture. And then you impose some other thing on them, which has nothing to do with anything, very damaging. But what's very beautiful to see is how that system is actually losing credibility, losing power. It's becoming rotten and kind of naturally disintegrating. And what's taking its place is something much more natural, something that corresponds better to some more ancient system. And maybe there's a lot of interest nowadays in the value of a matriarchy. Matriarchies are studied, and they're coming back to their power. There's a very amazing book written in Africa. It's got a Nobel Prize for literature called Things Fall Apart. And it describes exactly how the colonial system, which brought in a very forceful religious system, which completely destroyed the more ancient ways of a culture. And it takes centuries to recover from it, but it can be recovered from. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, there is some sort of hidden revolution going on where these old ways, which at one time were so strong and so impossible to do anything about, are losing their power, losing their credibility. And this kind of new growth of the old forest is coming back. And this kind of artificial thing is falling away. And that feels very good. And I think also the connection with spirituality is an important ingredient because it creates a different atmosphere, a different vibration, which is conducive to the natural ways, and which it's a vibration that hastens the demise of something that's unnatural or artificial. And so we must continue and proceed along these ways, I think.
Sister, we have a question from Zoom. Is it helpful to explore past traumas through, say, hypnotherapy or psychology? Or is it a hindrance to yoga, since ultimately yoga is the healing process?
I think you have to do what you have to do. Everyone is different. The traumas are different. Past traumas are different. But I think it can be very helpful. I think that you need to have someone who is working with you, someone who understands these things, someone who is expert in trauma therapy, who can help you to go back to some past life trauma. But all the things in past lives are in some way present in the current life because you bring everything with you. And so that you can even really look deeply into some of the patterns in this life and deduce that it may have come from a very long time ago. This is also possible. And, ultimately what you get when you do this kind of work is you realize that even the most extreme kind of trauma, you have the possibility within you to handle it, but it's a question of getting access to that capacity. And with the yoga, you are amplifying that capacity a great deal. And after some time, you get to a point where you have more energy, more power, more radiance than the trauma, because trauma is fragmentation. And so as you start to put all the pieces of your being together and glue them with golden drops, you restore yourself and you become a whole being. And this is what it's about.
But sister, you're inspiring me to deal more in yoga for children, because I am with children many, many times of the day. And I think for these two boys with me right now, yoga will help. I am very sure.
I think you need to do it in a very simple way. Maybe even not use the word yoga because people might get suspect. Really help them to feel their soul, to understand that they are souls and that they are beautiful, and that whatever happened to them happened to a kind of eggshell on the outside of them. Okay, the eggshell breaks, but you know, the egg in the middle is complete, and they don't have to be scrambled egg. They can be just a complete thing. And even if the shell was broken, that's the shell that protects them, but they can create a new one, which is more resilient. And that there is this golden soul in the middle of their being, which is their intelligence, their heart, and teach them some ways of thinking about traumatic experiences, so that they can not be traumatized by it so much as, okay, it happened, but it didn't happen to me, the being, it just happened. But I am, you know, I am integral, I am intact, I am myself, and I can handle this stuff. I am love, I am peace, I have good people around me. There are some good people and some not so good people, and that life is like that. And I can trust the good people, I don't have to trust the bad people. You can discriminate, even if people say that they are the only people who know anything, it doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. You know, this is how to let the child grow up without denying the trauma, but being able to gradually handle it as they grow. And then there are other traumas which are likely to come along, because once you're traumatized, you're susceptible to more trauma. But once you start learning these things as a child, how to defend yourself and protect yourself against bigger, stronger moral authorities who are actually toxic, then they're learning how to handle themselves and not get re-traumatized again and again.
Thank you, sister. Question: how do we survive in this toxic society?
Well, I think we better call it the divine comedy. Look
That's
at it.
positive, sister.
Yeah.
And how exactly does meditation repair the soul from trauma?
Well, meditation, when you connect yourself with the Supreme Being, you're setting up a resonance. And the resonance is a vibration which affects you. You know, the human soul is very, very subtle. And it is a mind which responds very well to harmonious vibrations, and it responds badly to dissonant vibrations. So, you know, music, which is very harmonious and very regular beat, is good. Pure thoughts, especially pure thoughts about yourself, really learning what a being is, and that it's nothing to do with your gender, your color, you know, all those messages that you receive from the world, you are this, you are that, you are the other, they're actually talking only about your covering, they're not talking about you. And so they need to increase this information to the individual about what that person is, what they stand for, and to realize that the soul is invisible is helpful, because the only thing that's visible is your shell, you know, and nobody's a shell. They're what's contained within the shell.
Sister, please explain further how, furthermore, how we can bring back or return to the soul's original power.
you just keep connection, just keep doing this. And it's a gradual process. It's a long process. It takes your whole life. And you just do it little by little. And you keep studying about this, and you keep getting little insights here and there. And gradually you put yourself back together again, you know, like a kind of Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and fell into pieces, but he put himself back together again. That's a story about the soul.
After all, children's poetry is not only for children, it's for all of us. And I do think, sister, that, you know, in my daycare classes, just when the children are most active, and when they get out of bounds, I invite them to stop a little bit and we talk to ourselves in silence. So we sit down and talk to ourselves. I do know that it is very effective, because afterwards, oh, there is some vibrance in the children, not noisy anymore, but loving themselves a little bit more.
So it all goes to show that you're on the right track.
Thank you for the assurance, sister. We're about to start another little school in one of our islets in
Wow.
Camotes, and I really look forward to being a more effective companion to the children because of what I'm learning from Inner Space, especially from you, sister.
Well, wonderful. And you're doing very good work, very good work.
Thank you, sister. So, Miss Ellen, we are really, really grateful for this session with you, sister. You know,
Thank you.
actually, it's really uplifting and really leading us to where we should go and how we should be. Miss Ellen, we will now have our ending meditation. Sister, you'll do it for us. Thank you.
Om Shanti. Take a moment to turn within. Listen to the deepest part of yourself. And allow yourself to be still, tranquil, calm. Feel the soul, the essence of the self, that beautiful, infinitesimal star of white light, the essence of love and sweetness, gentle and strong, eternal and indestructible. Loving the self, loving the divine, and loving humanity, the family of souls. Although most are broken, fragmented, badly damaged, reactive, negative, yet, in essence, in the original state, perfect, pure, strong, and beautiful. Now it is time to return. As I, the soul, return to my own origins, I exude a vibration that calls others to return to their pure vibration, their original state of bliss and peace. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you very much, Sister Denise, for that powerful, real powerful ending meditation. It really brings me back to think of the original self and the original property of every soul that I meet. And it's so inspiring and uplifting indeed to once again have that thought, that powerful thought, a strong thought that I am divine. I am with the divine. I am no longer fragmented. I am powerful. I am love. I am peaceful. And I am connected to the great power. It's really very empowering, sister. And I know out there, a lot of questions are still waiting to be answered. And may we call for a second part, sister, sometime next month if you have time? Can
Yes.
we set a date like September 28th?
Sounds
go ahead.
good.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Sister Denise. Indeed, it has been a very fruitful afternoon, and it's just a powerful feeling that I have right now. And I know a lot of us are sharing this feeling right now of upliftment in where we are as spiritual beings and identifying ourselves not with this body, profession, career, or nationality. We have gone beyond the bounds of the physical because we know that we are spirits, spiritual beings. So at this point, may I just acknowledge with our slides right now, acknowledging the people who are behind us right now, who have helped us make this thing come true. Sister Rupali of Chicago, who gave us the great graphic design that we have. It's an original one that Sister Rupali has made. And also to Sister Jaina Paraiso for the opening meditation commentary. And of course, to our translators, which include Sister Christina Falk of Germany, and also Sister Marie Ederi, our French translator. And of course, we also have to thank our sister who's doing the Spanish translation, Sister Leire Cano. Thank you so much. We appreciate so much your effort to be there and help us in understanding each other through the different languages. And Sister Denise, deep appreciation for your being there for us and having this special conversation on the impact of trauma. So we'll see you again, Sister Denise. And for everyone, September 28th, we'll see each other again for a second part of the impact of trauma. Thank you. Thank you. Can we have a special picture taking of those who are in Zoom right now? please open your camera so we can have our pictorial. Okay, there's Tina, there's Bobby, there's Pirko, Tony and Yvonne, Bobby John, Anna Hervas, Goody, Polian, Tony, Yvonne, Hamburg, Dr. Thor Wagner, and a lot more who have joined us this afternoon. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your being here with us. Join us once again, September 28th. Don't forget that. Okay. Thank you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Marga.